Hi, I'm Julian McKenzie.
And I'm Tristan d'Amour.
Welcome to the Scrum Podcast. This is our second episode this week. It's a special one because we were able to get Sam Stejskal from The Athletic to join us on the latest edition of the Scrum Podcast. We mentioned in our last episode Major League Soccer's plans to return to action. Sam has been pretty much all over the goings-on of Major League Soccer, especially with the plans to restart in Orlando, and his publication, The Athletic, recently being in the news after they were mentioned in a memo released by Major League Soccer threatening clubs with disciplinary action for leaking information. So we called up Sam and we got him to talk about what MLS's plans are, as well as being mentioned in a memo put out by Major League Soccer over leaks.
If you're a longtime listener of the Scrum Podcast, you will not be surprised. I'm seeing the memes right away of, all right, first guest on as they reboot is someone from The Athletic, but I think that was one of the, and it's something that we were talking about when we were planning on rebooting the show under the Sports Podcasting Network. While we were saying, oh, we want to open it up. At first we were only doing Canadian media or Canadians that are outside of Canada. And I think that Sam really shows the types of guests and the types of interviews that we can get now, or that we're going to focus on now. Sam is one of the best journalists in soccer media right now. I personally am a big fan of his work, and it was a tremendous interview, which you're about to listen to, and it really shows the type of stuff that we're going to be putting out now, which is really exciting.
And without further ado, take it away, Sam.
Hey, I'm Sam Stejskal, staff writer for The Athletic, covering Major League Soccer and all things soccer in Canada and the U.S. Working on a lot of stuff right now, but primarily about MLS's return to play plan in Orlando, which I'm sure you'll hear more about on the show.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us. First thing, before we jump into all of the MLS questions we've got for you and all the return to play plans that have been thrown out there, how have you been holding up amidst this whole COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking, first of all. I've been doing fine. I can't complain, healthy and, staying somewhat sane as possible. So hopefully you guys are all in the same boat.
So Sam, one of the, at least as us as journalists, we were all very happy for you guys to learn that. But a few days ago, we learned through The Athletic that Major League Soccer had sent an internal memo warning about leaking stuff to The Athletic, and then it ended up being on The Athletic.
Yeah.
What was your reaction with that? It seems like it's the biggest badge of honor, a journalist can get, right?
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It it definitely made me laugh a little bit, made me smile for sure. But I think it's just kind of illustrative of where the league is at right now, right? And they're very, very all about this Orlando plan. And there are a lot of sensitivities around it with the players and with governments and with other leagues potentially, and with a lot of different parties that they're trying to negotiate with so they can get this over the line. Obviously Commissioner Don Garber does not want any leaks to affect that. I can understand that, from his perspective. But it's still our job to try and find that stuff out. And I also think it's kind of illustrative that, talking to some players over the last couple of weeks, they've learned information from my reporting and my colleagues' reporting, and that hasn't really sat well with them. And it's one thing if that was the case during like a normal CBA negotiation. Of course the league is going to keep things tight during something like that, right? You don't want to show too many of your cards and let the other party know how you're going to negotiate. But this isn't like that, right? And there are elements that are like that, but primarily this is a situation where players are worried a little bit about their health and safety and worried a lot about leaving their families. And so they feel like, we should really be partners in this and not adversaries at the negotiating table. We should have really been brought in, and we should be a main part of these kind of talks and designing this plan.
Sam, it's been written that Major League Soccer players have been either publicly or privately, they've been voicing their concerns over the plan. How do you think players and team officials really feel about having to play games again in Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, everyone wants to get back to the field, right? But they just want to do it in a way that makes sense for them. And what makes sense for one individual doesn't make sense for another. And no one was really excited about the idea of going to Orlando for 2 months, which was the initial plan. Now they're talking about something that would be a shorter version of that, maybe like 6 weeks. So I think every week that you cut it, right, more people are going to be on board. It's less time they have to be away from their families. But, the players, they're not super thrilled about it, but they understand that nothing is going to be ideal here. Interestingly, the people that I've spoken to that aren't players, so coaches or staff that would be traveling to Orlando, they're not super thrilled about this on a personal level either, right? And they don't really have an outlet. They kind of have to go with the flow, right? It's not like they have a players union that they can negotiate with the league with. This Orlando plan have too many of those to get the players to sign off on it.
I guess that kind of answers a question I was about to ask, but let me just add a little bit of a twist there, because MLS is in this situation where the new CBA has yet to be ratified. How much does that also kind of play into these negotiations for the Orlando tournament?
Well, it's just sort of looming there over everyone's head, right? The knowledge of that in the back of their minds. And I think it's pretty important, honestly. And I do think that this tournament is going to happen. And I do think that, the fact that, the CBA hasn't been ratified is probably a significant part of creating some urgency on the part of the players, right? They're talking about these pay cut negotiations as well. And that's another part of this that I hadn't mentioned yet. And, let's say they're not that far apart now. Let's say that ends up at around 7.5% for every player in the league of a pay cut for 2020, and then some additional stuff probably. But if they don't agree to return to play in Orlando, I'm guessing there's probably some way, whether that's via lockout or some other labor law rule that I'm unfamiliar with, that the pay would be slashed much more significantly than that. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to get the players to agree to this plan, even if it's not to their preferred exact specifications.
How much of an additional challenge is it for Major League Soccer to plan their return to Orlando and establish all of these different logistics and player safety standpoints, while also at the same time having to deal with another league, in this case the NBA, trying to do the same thing in the same city?
I'm trying to find out more about this, as we speak, actually, because in terms of the playing standpoint at the wide world of sports, everything that I've heard, it seems like it would be fine. Obviously, basketball courts and soccer fields are two different sets of facilities, and I don't think there'll be much overlap, and all of that would be all good. In terms of the lodging, there do appear to be a few questions, because it seems like the NBA might be doing more than one hotel. They might be spreading out and doing a bunch of different hotels, maybe one hotel per team. Would that kind of invade on the Coronado Springs resort that MLS has been planning on using? I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't been told that it would, but I'm trying to follow up on that now. So we'll see. I mean, obviously ESPN and Disney play a role in both of those leagues' discussions to return to play in Orlando. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out and if it has any impact. I would say, even if MLS gets booted from Coronado Springs, which, I don't know if I'm anticipating that or anything, but there are plenty of hotels in Orlando. I think it has the second most hotel rooms in the country outside of Vegas. So they'll be able to find space. It's just a question of where and how nice it is.
Yeah, I was about to bring up my colleague at ProSoc USA, Liana Limon Romero, was saying that exactly what you were just saying, that there's a lot of hotels in Orlando. It just depends on the whereabouts, because according to her, the Wide World of Sports complex, there could be some duds there in terms of logistically staying, but ultimately it'll depend on the whereabouts of Orlando leagues and their restarts. We had the NHL were announcing their plans for their new playoff, quote unquote, playoff format. The NWSL seems to have the most concrete plans as of the time we're speaking right now, with their tournament in Utah with actual dates. Is MLS more, quote unquote, on the clock now than they were before?
I think so. I don't know if it's really much related to kind of the other leagues, but or more to the natural progression. There is a desire within MLS to come back first before the other major men's leagues in North America. So that's a real thing, and the window for that is shortening, for sure. But at the same time, I think it's going to be interesting, because part of this is going to be dictated by how fast the players go. In terms of kind of giving feedback and collecting kind of their answers on these proposals and how fast they get them back to the league and all of that stuff. That being said, I do think that we're headed towards a resolution. One way or another, we're going to have some clarity, I think, probably pretty soon on this. And, maybe even, by Monday or Tuesday, but possibly within a week or so.
Earlier this week, former Montreal Impact technical director Nick DeSantis made an appearance on RDS earlier. He made an appearance on RDS talking about the league restarting. And he said that Major League Soccer kind of needs to stay relevant, and a restart would be pretty important, because since it doesn't have the history that other North American soccer leagues have, like the NHL or the NBA, and the fan bases that they have, he kind of felt like it's pretty important for them to kind of get out on the gate first and kind of put themselves out there. Just to kind of add on to the question we asked a little before, do you think the ML at Major League Soccer is a little bit more desperate to restart?
I don't know. I don't know if desperate is the word I would use. They're definitely motivated, right, to restart before those other leagues, like I mentioned. But, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't really know how important that is, to be totally honest. If they start a week before MLB or a week before the NHL, maybe you get a slight pop in that first week of games. But are those people going to stick around to watch soccer at 9 a.m. in Orlando when it's really hot outside, with players who aren't in top form or top fitness, playing in front of an empty, little stadium at the Wide World of Sports? I don't think it's going to be a super compelling product in terms of what it looks like on the field. And so I think kind of rushing back, while I understand the desire to do it, because you would get more eyeballs, and that is important, I do think it just should be secondary to actually doing this in the right way.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that specific point, and it's great that you brought it up. What are your thoughts on the early morning starts? You could technically say that it's in the ballpark of people watching all of the leagues that are in Europe. Bundesliga is already started, and then we saw news really late today that it was the Premier League and La Liga is also restarting. There's going to be a lot of stuff in those early morning time slots.
Yeah, there is. MLS, and to be fair, I haven't seen or heard really about a new schedule with the proposed shortened tournament, but under the prior plan, where every team was going to be playing a minimum of 5 games, you were going to have games every day, right? So it wouldn't just be happening Saturdays and Sundays. They would be happening throughout the week. So I think you would have your own windows. And personally, speaking from my own perspective, I think it'd be cool to be able to watch MLS at 9 a.m. over a cup of coffee in the morning. That for those on the West Coast, it's a little bit of a different story, right? But for those of us in the Eastern time zone, it's not so bad. So yeah, I think it could have been cool. I think it could be cool, because I would imagine that'll be the same schedule. And from just a physical standpoint, I think it makes sense. You just simply cannot play games in the middle of the day in Orlando in the summertime. It's way too hot. And so in order to fit in all the games that they need to fit in and the amount of time that they can fit them in, you kind of have to stagger it like that. And I was sort of looking forward to it. And if it does come off, I think it'll be kind of cool to be able to take those games in as part of the morning routine.
Yeah, I don't know. I find like waking up early sometimes, like if to get me to wake up early on a day where I know I don't have to do anything is hard enough. But like, for soccer, I'm willing to consider doing it. Of course.
Come on, 9 a.m.
So
J-Mac.
I'm being a little facetious. The one thing I'm still trying to make sense of the current plan or of the newer plan that's being discussed here. So there may be like a kind of like a round robin World Cup style tournament with some of these teams, and is it possible we still might get regular season games out of it? I'm still kind of lost about what exactly is going to happen.
The details are still a little bit murky about the shorter plan. From what I'm told, it would be 3 group stage games for every team and then some sort of knockout round. I would assume with 8 teams, that was what the previous plan was. I have not been able to confirm that. And under the previous plan, it would count towards regular season, those 5 games / now 3 games. And from what I've been told, that remains the case. The idea is then to go back into the home markets, and this would be towards August, I guess, and play games in front of closed door stadiums in home markets. One plan that I've been told was floated around called for 18 games in home markets after that, and then move into the playoffs. So that's the hope. That's the idea. Will that be feasible? No one knows, right? Like, who knows what the virus will look like come the fall. And if the Orlando plan pops off, which I think it will, there's a chance that could be the entire season. There's a chance that it could just be the beginning. So who knows? Nobody.
And I guess would the tournament games count?
Oh. Yeah.
Sorry.
So the group from the previous plan, the 5-game plan, the 2-month plan down there, the 5 group stage games would count towards the regular season. The knockout games would not, because only 8 teams would have advanced. So you'd be in a situation where, some teams are playing more than others, and it would just kind of mess things up on the back end. But there will be some sort of prize for the winner. So you're not just playing the knockout games for fun. You'll be, maybe it's a Champions League berth, maybe it's a cash prize, maybe it's a combination. Who knows? But there would be some stakes attached to that at the end.
So just to come back and kind of, highlight it. So it's still the possibility of hosting games in markets, kind of like what we see in Bundesliga. That is still on the table as lightly as it is.
Yeah, I mean, like they're gonna try and do that, of course, and like ideally, right? I'm sure they would love to get fans in the stadiums if that is permitted and if that's allowed, right? So yeah, they're gonna try and get in as many games as possible in whatever way they can, and makes sense. And I think for all of us who follow the league or write about it or pay attention to it, the more the better, right? As long as it's done in a safe, responsible way and the players are cool with it, then I don't think any of us would complain.
Yeah, there's still a lot to figure out with the coronavirus, but at least for people who have been dying to watch Major League Soccer, at least there seems to be games on the horizon. There's planning on the horizon. Something seems to be happening, and we're thankful that you, Sam, were able to kind of make sense of what's been going on over the last few days for us here on the Scrum Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me on, you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Scrum Podcast. If you want to send us questions or share your stories with us, shoot us an email at thescrumpodcast@gmail.com.
You can follow us on Twitter at the Scrum Podcast, and us individually. I'm at Tristan d'Amour. He is at JKA McKenzie.
If you're interested in sponsoring us or buying ad space on the show, shoot us an email again at thescrumpodcast@gmail.com. We will give you a quote.
J-Mac, you know what it is. You know what's happening next.
Oh my God.
You know what's happening next.
Here we go.
You can also support us by leaving a rating and a review on Stitcher, on Apple Podcasts. Are we on Apple Podcasts? I feel like we are. It's going to take a little while.
Podcasts now. We are on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, we are.
Oh, wait, are we on Stitcher? We're on Stitcher, right?
Remember, Stitcher, I don't know. But remember, this is a different feed. We are on the Sports Podcasting Network feed, and you can get all of it. You can get all of the shows that we recorded before. Just make sure to follow the new feed. And also, the free part, share the episode with a friend, with a loved one. We're talking about sports restarting. A lot of people are excited about that. Maybe just drop a share.
Yeah, anything helps. Special thanks to Cooper Richardson for letting us use his music. His SoundCloud link is in the description.
This show is produced and edited by Kevin Laramie, aka Producer Kevin, for the purposes of this show. As part of the Sports Podcasting Network, you can find all about the network's shows at sportspodcastingnetwork.com. They're also on Twitter at sportspodnet. J-Mac, it's good. We have an ad read. We have an outro read now. It feels like we're really coming back together. It's good.
I can't wait until we have an ad read again. That's going to be fun. But now we have an outro. We have a proper intro. We have an interview. Stejskal was so gracious enough to join us on this episode here. It was really great to talk to him about Major League Soccer's return. This was a really good, awesome episode to do a return to form.
Absolutely. Many, many thanks to Sam, one of the great guys in soccer media. Many thanks to you for listening, and we will have an episode on Monday like we usually do, but we felt that Sam's insight was just that good that it had to be shared right away. But, as always, we'll hear you all next time.